The roar of 12 motorcycles cut through the dusk like thunder chasing the sun. They were headed east, black leather, chrome flashing, engines rumbling low, when the car appeared ahead, swerving onto the shoulder like something inside had snapped. Jax Mercer throttled down first. "That car's gonna flip," he muttered into his comm. The taillights blinked once, twice, then went still. Steam rose from the hood. And through the fogged-up window they saw her, a woman in scrubs, face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking like she'd been holding it in for miles. The bikers slowed in a line behind her, engines idling. Rain started, soft but steady. Jax pulled off his helmet, jaw set. "Rico, kill the lights. No need to spook her." As the glare faded, the world around them dimmed to a quiet hum of engines and falling rain. The nurse, mid-30s, dark curls matted against her cheeks, finally looked up. Her mascara had streaked down to her chin, and when her eyes met Jax's, there was something raw in them, not fear, desperation. She cracked open her window, voice trembling. "Please, I can't stop." "Not now, ma'am," Jax said softly, raising his hands to show peace. "You already did," her breathing quickened. He noticed the streak of red on her sleeve, dark, dried, blood, but not from her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head fast. "Not me." Then her voice broke. "It's in the trunk." The words froze him mid-step. The rest of the pack exchanged sharp looks. "In the trunk?" Leon asked carefully. She nodded once, tears spilling over. "Please." "I have to get it there before it's too late." "What's in there?" Jax pressed, his tone low and calm. Her lips quivered. She whispered, barely audible through the rain, "A heart." For a full beat, nobody spoke. The only sound was the slow drip of rain hitting chrome. Then she choked out, "It's for a little boy. He's waiting for it in Atlanta." "I stole it. The hospital wouldn't approve the transfer, said the paperwork wasn't cleared. But he'll die if I don't—" Her voice cracked again. It's been 3 hours already. I can't lose another minute." The bikers looked at each other. Not disbelief, not judgment, just quiet awe. Rico muttered under his breath, "She's hauling a kid's heart in there?" The nurse covered her mouth, shaking. "I didn't know where else to go. I just kept driving, but I don't think I can make it." The rain fell harder now, pooling around their boots. Lightning flashed across the highway, turning her tear-streaked face to porcelain. Jax took one long breath, then looked her dead in the eye. "You just did the bravest damn thing I've ever seen." She blinked through the tears, confused. He pointed toward her rearview mirror, at the line of bikes stretching behind her like a steel army. "Lady, you ain't alone anymore." He turned to his pack. "Brothers, we're riding for life tonight." Engines revved one by one like thunder waking the sky. 12 red taillights glowed in the storm. And as the nurse wiped her eyes and started her engine again, she didn't know it yet. But those bikers were about to do something that would make headlines. Save a child, and remind everyone watching that heroes don't always wear badges or scrubs. Sometimes they ride Harleys. The storm had found its rhythm now, sheets of rain slapping the asphalt, thunder rumbling in slow intervals. The convoy of bikes flanked the nurse's silver sedan like guardian angels in leather. Jax rode up front, visor cracked just enough to see her taillights through the mist. Every few seconds, her car would drift toward the shoulder before jerking back. She was exhausted, running on fumes and adrenaline. When they finally pulled into a covered truck stop, she was shaking so hard she could barely shift into park. Jax swung off his Harley, boots splashing through puddles, and motioned for Rico and Leon to keep watch. He approached the driver's side. "Hey, you need to breathe now, all right? We're off the road. Nobody's gonna stop you here." The nurse looked up, eyes glassy and unfocused. "You don't understand. Every minute we waste—" Jax crouched beside the window, steady and patient. "You said it's for a kid in Atlanta. How far were you when you left the hospital?" She swallowed, her throat raw. "South Carolina. Palmetto Regional." They said there was a mix-up. Another patient was scheduled for the transplant, but his vitals were stable. "The boy, he didn't have ours." Her voice trembled, breaking mid-sentence. "I begged them. I'm a trauma nurse. I see it every day. I knew he wouldn't make it through the night. Jax nodded slowly. So you took it? I took it. She laughed, a hollow, broken sound. I stole a donor heart from a federal medical facility. There are cameras, signatures, everything. I'm finished. He studied her for a long moment. The rain softened behind them, like even the sky had stopped to listen. What's the boy's name? Eli. Her eyes flickered toward the trunk as if she could see him there. 8 years old. Congenital heart defect. His mom's been living in the waiting room for 3 months. Leon joined them, shaking the rain off his jacket. Jax, we're gonna have company if we sit here. State lines mean alerts. The nurse's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. You think I don't know that? They're tracking me already. I couldn't watch another mother lose her child. Not when I could stop it. There it was again, that tremor in her voice that wasn't fear, but fury at a world too slow to care. Jax leaned an arm on the window frame. You're telling me you risked prison to give a kid a fighting chance? She met his eyes. Wouldn't you? He didn't answer because he knew he would. Every man behind him had once done something reckless in the name of what was right. Rico approached, wiping the rain off his beard. Boss, there's a chopper hovering 2 miles north. Civilian, not law enforcement, but tracking her. Jax finished. The nurse looked up sharply. They'll find me before I cross the state line. I can't, he cut her off with a hand. Then we make sure they don't. She stared at him like she didn't quite believe it. Why? You don't even know me. Jax gave a small half-smile. We don't need to. We just know you're driving for the right reason. He stood, voice steady as command. Rico, Leon, we split formation. 6 up front, 6 behind. She stays dead center. Nobody sees her plate. If that chopper gets low, blind it with the high beams. The bikers nodded, the unspoken loyalty between them needing no words. The nurse's eyes filled again. You could get arrested for helping me. Ma'am, Leon said with a quiet grin. That ain't the first time someone said that to us. Jax tapped twice on her window. You drive. We'll handle the rest. She hesitated. You sure? He stepped back, rain streaking down his face. You said a little boy's waiting. That's all we need to hear. The nurse started the engine, hands still trembling. As the headlights lit the road again, Jax swung back onto his bike. The formation shifted seamlessly, chrome and thunder and purpose. They moved as one down the highway, engines screaming against the storm. Inside the car, she couldn't stop glancing in the mirror at those 12 riders surrounding her like a wall of metal and conviction. For the first time since she'd stolen that cooler, she didn't feel alone. At mile marker 212, the first siren wailed faintly behind them. State Patrol, distant, but closing fast. Jax's voice came over comms. They found her signal. We can't outrun them on the interstate. Rico, you still know that service road near the quarry? Yeah, it's rough, but it'll buy us time. Then we take it. The nurse's hands tightened on the wheel as Jax's Harley roared ahead of her, leading the turn. She didn't know where they were going. Only that every man in front of her had decided, without question, without hesitation, that her mission was now theirs. And when the sirens grew louder, she whispered the same prayer she'd whispered 100 times in the last 12 hours. Please, let me get there in time. The bikers answered in kind, not with words but with throttle. Engines roared. Tires bit into wet asphalt. And under the bleeding red sky of dusk, 12 men and 1 trembling nurse disappeared into the rain, carrying hope, defiance, and a child's second chance in a metal box. The rain didn't let up. It only got angrier. By the time the convoy reached the split in the highway, the nurses' wipers were fighting a losing battle. Headlights blurred into streaks of white, the world reduced to sound and motion, thunder, wind, and 12 engines like a chorus of defiance. Jax's voice came low over the comms. Rico, take point. Leon, block any tail that gets too close. No one passes her. Not one. They turned sharply off the interstate and onto a narrow service road, the kind no GPS would ever recommend. Gravel sprayed. Mud splashed. The nurse's sedan fishtailed hard before steadying under Jax's steady pace ahead. Her hands gripped the wheel so tight her knuckles went white. What if they shoot at us? She whispered, voice cracking. Rico's voice crackled in her earpiece. He'd synced her phone to their comms while she wasn't looking. They won't risk it in the rain, but they'll try to box you in. As if on cue, headlights appeared behind them, twin beams slicing through the storm. Leon cursed under his breath. 2 units, maybe more. The nurse's breath came in short, panicked bursts. I can't go to prison. That boy? Then don't look back, Jax ordered. Look at me. Just keep your eyes on my tail light, follow it. I'll get you there. He gunned the throttle, cutting through the mud like it was dry asphalt. His bike's rear light became her only guide, a red pulse in the darkness, a promise. Behind her, Leon's group fanned out, deliberately slowing. One cruiser tried to swerve around, but Big Mike's Harley cut in front, sparks flying as metal kissed bumper. The cop slammed on the brakes, tires screaming. Rico laughed over comms, adrenaline high. They picked the wrong Sunday drive, boys. Focus, Jax barked. We're not fighting them. We're losing them. They roared around a bend, and the nurse saw it. An old, rusted sign half swallowed by vines. Quarry access. No trespassing. The road dipped hard and vanished into trees. Jax didn't slow. The nurse's heart leapt into her throat as her tires hit the incline, water splashing up over her windshield. And then suddenly, they were in darkness. The canopy above swallowed what little light the storm allowed. The bikers' headlights painted the wet rock walls and scattered gravel. The rain dulled to a whisper here, muted by the cliffs. Cut your lights, Jax ordered. She hesitated, but did it. The sudden blackness was terrifying. One by one, the bikers' engines idled down until the sound of rain and her pounding heartbeat filled the air. Are we hiding? She asked. Jax parked beside her window, rain dripping off his jacket. No, we're waiting. For what? He looked out toward the narrow entrance they'd come through. For them to make a mistake. Minutes dragged. The woman's nerves stretched thin. She thought about the boy, Eli, waiting in that sterile hospital room, machines beeping, his mother clutching his hand. Every second felt like another heartbeat slipping away, and then, faintly over the rain, sirens, distant, searching, confused. The cruisers had missed the turn. Rico grinned. They took the wrong road. Leon clapped his shoulder. Told you Jack still had the devil's luck. But the nurse didn't laugh. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. Even if we make it past them, I'll never get through the checkpoints. Atlanta hospitals are on alert for me by now. Jax turned toward her, eyes steady under the low glow of the dashboard. You don't worry about the hospital. You just keep driving when I say drive, she frowned. What are you planning? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the back of her car and opened the trunk. The nurse tensed, watching him lift the heavy cooler, the one she'd risked everything for. He held it like something sacred, his gloved hands steady even as water poured down around him. You ever carry something that mattered more than your own life? He asked quietly. She nodded once. Every night I worked in that ER. He gave a small, grim smile. Then you understand. He turned to Rico. We split again. You take half the pack and clear the south route. Find me a clean entry point into the city. No eyes, no cameras. Leon looked skeptical. And if we get separated? Jax's gaze didn't waver. We won't. Not until this heart beats again. For a moment, no one spoke. The storm had softened into drizzle, leaving only the quiet hum of engines cooling and the faint hiss of wet gravel. Then Jax set the cooler back gently into the trunk, closed it, and nodded to the nurse. Let's go save that boy. She wiped her face with a trembling hand and started the engine again. The bikers remounted, tires sliding slightly in the mud. They rolled out of the quarry like ghosts, silent, focused, determined. As they merged back onto the back road, the nurse saw something that made her throat tighten, a hawk circling above the trees, wings catching a slice of moonlight breaking through the clouds. It felt like a sign. For the first time since the night began, she whispered, he might actually live. Jax's voice came through the comms. Low and certain. He will. I promise you that. And under that storm-streaked Georgia sky, the convoy disappeared once again, chasing not freedom this time, but a heartbeat. The city lights rose ahead like a mirage, golden veins of movement through the storm haze. To the nurse, it was both hope and hell waiting at the end of the highway. Her heart thudded in rhythm with the windshield wipers, every beat whispering the same name: Eli, Eli, Eli. Rain slicked the road, making every turn a gamble. Behind her, the bikers stayed in formation, 12 dark silhouettes in the mist, red tail lights burning steady like living embers. Then Jax's voice came over the comms. "Checkpoint ahead. Everyone, kill your lights. We move quiet from here." The nurse's chest tightened. "Checkpoint here?" "Atlanta PD's locking down all eastbound routes." "Someone's tipped them off," Leon said grimly. "They're looking for a female suspect. Nurse, 30s, driving a silver sedan." "That's me," her voice cracked. "Oh, God, that's me." "Hey," Jax's tone softened but stayed firm, commanding. "Breathe. You didn't come this far to lose it now." They pulled off onto the shoulder, engines idling low. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but thunder still rolled somewhere beyond the skyline. The checkpoint was visible down the slope, flashing blue and red lights cutting through the darkness. Officers waving cars through one by one. Each driver stopped, answered questions, sometimes got pulled aside. The nurse's hands shook so hard the steering wheel creaked. "They'll arrest me on sight." "They'll open the trunk!" Jax leaned in through her window, rain dripping from his beard. "Then we don't give them the chance," he signaled to Rico and Leon. "Time to run the decoy." The nurse frowned. "The what?" Rico grinned, pulling a small black pouch from his jacket. Inside were 2 license plates, both stolen, both bent. "We've done this before." "Too many times," Leon muttered, already mounting his bike again. Jax looked back at her. "You're gonna take the dirt road behind that sign." He pointed to a faded billboard ahead. "Peach Motors, deals worth the drive. Stay in low gear. It'll take you to a side access by the freight yard. You'll find a tunnel under the old bridge. It connects to the hospital's maintenance road." "No cameras." She blinked at him, rain mixing with tears. "How do you even know this stuff?" Jax gave a faint smirk. "We used to run less noble things through those tunnels, then more serious. Whatever happens, you don't stop. You hear me? Even if you hear sirens, even if you see lights, you don't stop." The nurse swallowed hard, nodding. "What about you?" Jax's gaze drifted toward the checkpoint where an officer was stepping out to wave down another car. "Someone's got to keep their eyes off you." Before she could protest, he slapped the hood of her car, hard, like punctuation, and turned away. "Let's make it loud." "Boys!" Rico revved his engine and the others followed suit. The sound was thunder incarnate, a roaring wall of defiance that tore through the quiet rain. The bikers accelerated toward the checkpoint, tires screaming on wet asphalt. The officers scrambled, shouting, some diving for cover as 12 black motorcycles burst through the glare, engines howling, lights flashing. "Stop! Hands up!" one cop yelled, but the roar swallowed his words. Jax led the charge, headlights cutting through blue strobes, jacket flaring in the wind. They didn't crash the barricade. They didn't even hit it. They drew it. Half the officers spun around, chasing the bikes that now veered off the main road and onto the opposite lane, engines echoing against the walls of the bridge. And in that chaos, in that blur of sirens, shouting, and spinning tires, the nurse slipped through the dirt road behind the sign. Just as Jax said, her car jolted, mud splattering the sides, the tires slipping. Branches whipped against her windows. But she didn't stop. Not once. She kept whispering to herself, "Don't stop! Don't stop! Don't stop!" Back on the highway, the scene was chaos. Rico's bike skidded hard, barely missing a squad car that tried to cut him off. He laughed even as his engine smoked. Leon dropped a flare behind them, its bright red light painting the rain in blood hues. Jack slowed at the turn, looked back, just long enough to see her taillights disappear behind the billboard and into the trees. Then he throttled up again, drawing the police farther away. For nearly 10 minutes, the chase burned through the outskirts, through industrial roads, down slick alleys across the ghosted edges of the city. Finally, As the sirens began to fade behind him, Jax took a sharp turn and stopped beneath an overpass. Rain dripped from the concrete above. His breathing was heavy. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. He opened his comm. "Rico, Leon, report. Rico here. They're chasing shadows. We're clear. Leon's fine. Bruised ego, but no cuffs." Jax let out a long, quiet breath. "Good. She's on her way." Then, after a pause, his tone softened. A rare crack in the armor. She better make it. Meanwhile, the nurse's sedan emerged from the trees onto a silent road, the city skyline now towering just ahead. She could see the hospital sign glowing through the rain. She slowed, just for a second, and looked in the rearview mirror. No lights. No engines. No one behind her. And that's when it hit her. The bikers weren't coming. They'd stayed back. They'd risked everything to clear her path. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Please, God, let them make it too." Then she pressed her foot to the pedal and drove toward the hospital, toward the boy waiting for her, and the heart that could change everything. The storm had followed her all the way to the hospital. Lightning cracked behind her as she pulled into the underground bay, brakes squealing. The security guard jumped from his booth. "Ma'am, you can't park." She threw open the door, her scrubs plastered to her skin, soaked, trembling, eyes wide and red from tears. "I'm a nurse." "Transplant unit! Code red!" She yanked open the trunk, the cooler inside still humming, condensation beating down its sides. The guard froze when he saw the hospital seal and the word organ printed in bold red. He didn't ask another question. "Go, go!" She sprinted through the service corridor, shoes slapping the tile, breath ragged. The elevator seemed to take forever, each floor crawling by, her reflection in the steel doors a blur of fear and hope. When it finally opened, the surgical team was already waiting. Dr. Patel, the transplant surgeon, and 2 assistants in scrubs and masks. "Where the hell were you?" he snapped. "We lost contact over an hour ago. The donor's family's been calling non-stop." She held out the cooler, hands shaking. "I got delayed." "But it's here." Dr. Patel took it, eyes narrowing. "We almost lost this heart." She swallowed hard, voice breaking. "You almost lost too." He didn't understand. "Not yet. Get her cleaned up," he barked to a nurse. "We're going in now." The scrub room blurred past in flashes, soap, gloves, masks, the hum of fluorescent lights. Her body moved on instinct, muscle memory guiding her even as her mind replayed the night, the rain, the sirens, Jax's voice over the comm, "Don't stop, no matter what." Now, standing beside the operating table, she realized why those words hit so hard. Because the heart inside that cooler wasn't just any heart, it was her sister's. She had promised, whispered it through the static of machines, that her sister's heart would keep beating in someone else's chest. That promise had nearly died tonight. She looked through the glass panel toward the waiting area, where a small boy sat curled in a chair, clutching a teddy bear. Eli. His eyes were puffy, his cheeks pale. But when he saw her, even through the glass, he smiled. And that's when she knew the bikers hadn't just saved a nurse. They'd saved a promise. Inside the OR, everything felt both sharp and slow, the sound of monitors, the sterile light reflecting off metal. Dr. Patel's voice cut through the hum. "Incision made. Steady, steady." The heart was lifted from the cooler, pink, perfect, still alive with faint rhythm. It pulsed faintly in his gloved hands, as if remembering where it came from. The nurse watched from her position, not scrubbed in, but close enough to feel every beat of tension. She clasped her hands tight to stop them from shaking. Dr. Patel's eyes narrowed. "Pressure steady. We're ready for connection." Minutes stretched into eternities. Every beep, every breath was a prayer. Every movement of the scalpel, a memory of the sister she'd lost. And then, restarting circulation. "Stand by." A soft pause. 1 second, 2, 3, then beep, 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 beep. The heart began to beat. The team exhaled as one, like an orchestra reaching its final chord. Dr. Patel looked up, eyes softening just slightly. "We have a pulse." Tears blurred the nurse's vision. She bit her lip to keep from sobbing out loud, because in that moment, it wasn't just her sister's heart that came back to life. It was hers, too. When she stepped outside into the corridor, her legs gave out. She sank against the wall, hands covering her face. Her sobs were silent but fierce, not grief anymore, but gratitude so deep it hurt. Then her phone buzzed, unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, static. Wind. A low voice. Did you make it? She froze. Jax! Did you make it, nurse? He repeated, his tone calm but rough, like gravel and mercy mixed together. Yes, she whispered. We did. The heart's beating. A faint chuckle crackled through the line. Knew you would. Where are you? Nowhere you need to worry about. A pause. Just keep that heart safe. Both of them. The call cut out before she could respond. She stared at the phone. Tears falling fresh again. This time for someone she barely knew, but who'd carried her farther than anyone ever had. And when she looked up, she saw the boy, Eli, standing by the glass doors, clutching his bear, watching her with big brown eyes. He ran toward her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Thank you, he whispered. She knelt and hugged him back, her voice breaking into the crown of his little head. No, baby, thank you. Because in saving him, she'd finally saved herself too. The rain had slowed by morning, leaving the world washed clean and quiet. For the first time in 12 hours, the nurse stepped outside the hospital doors. The parking lot shimmered with puddles reflecting the gray sky, and the air smelled of asphalt and wet leaves. Her shift was technically over, but her mind was still caught between worlds, the sterile hum of the OR and the raw chaos of the road. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something. She hadn't realized she still had but a metal keychain shaped like a feather, glinting faintly under the soft daylight. She turned it over. Engraved on the back were 2 words, Ride Free. It wasn't hers. Jax must have dropped it in the car when he helped push it out of the ditch. The thought made her chest tighten. She still hadn't heard from him since that call. Inside the hospital, the world had already moved on. The transplant team was filing reports. The patient's family was crying tears of relief in the waiting room. And little Eli, now calm, fed, and safe, was drawing something on a scrap of paper with the crayons the nurses gave him. When she walked over, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes. Are the bikers coming back? He asked. She smiled faintly. I don't know, sweetheart. He held up his drawing. It was a row of motorcycles, drawn in shaky lines and bright colors. And on one of the bikes, there was a stick figure with yellow hair. Her. She laughed softly, tears threatening again. That's me? He nodded. You were riding fast. She hugged him close, whispering, Yeah, we all were. By noon, she finally walked to her car, the same car that had carried a life through that storm. As she stood beside it, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. Unknown number. Check the news. She frowned, thumb trembling slightly as she opened the link. A local report flashed across her screen. Local biker group prevents highway collision. Clears route for emergency medical transport. Authorities say the group, identified as the Road Saints, helped redirect traffic during severe weather to allow a medical emergency vehicle to reach the city hospital. 2 members were injured when debris struck their lead bike. One remains in critical condition. Her stomach dropped. She scrolled down. There was a blurry photo of flashing lights, police cars, and a line of bikes stopped along a flooded stretch of road. At the center of the photo, a tall figure lay on a stretcher, the back of his leather vest visible. The emblem smeared but still clear, Road Saints Missy, her vision blurred. Jax, she whispered. The next hour passed in fragments, her racing across the city, the storm still drizzling like a ghost of the night before. When she reached the smaller hospital on the outskirts of town, she almost didn't breathe until she saw him, Jax Mercer, bandaged, bruised, but alive. He was sitting up in bed, arm in a sling, arguing with a nurse who looked ready to sedate him. I'm fine, he was saying. I've had worse falls. The nurse turned, spotted her, and sighed with relief. Thank God. Maybe you can make him sit down for 5 minutes. She smiled weakly and walked over. You really don't know how to quit, do you? He smirked, wincing as he shifted. You delivered a heart in a thunderstorm. I just caught a stop sign with my ribs. We're even, her breath caught. Laughter and tears tangled. You didn't tell me you were hurt? Would have slowed you down, he said simply. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, sunlight was finally breaking through the clouds, soft, golden, fragile. She placed the feather keychain on his bedside table. You dropped this. He looked at it, then back at her. Guess it found the right pocket. Or maybe, she said, smiling, it found the right road. Jax leaned back, his eyes distant but calm. You know, people like us, we don't get to choose much. Roads, storms, endings. But sometimes, he looked at her again, his voice softening. Sometimes you meet someone who reminds you why you keep riding. She swallowed hard. And sometimes you meet someone who reminds you what it means to fight. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was healing. Like a prayer said without words. When she stood to leave, he nodded toward the window. Go see the kid before you go. He's the real reason any of this worked out, she smiled. I already did. Outside, the world had turned quiet again. She walked to her car, keys in hand, but didn't start it right away. The hospital's reflection shimmered in the windshield, and behind it, for just a second, she imagined a dozen bikers riding off into the dawn. The roads were wet, the air still cool, but there was something lighter in the sky now, like the storm had taken all the fear with it. She traced her thumb over the indentation on her steering wheel where the feather keychain used to hang, and for the first time in years, she whispered to herself, I made it. And somewhere, miles down a winding road, Jax Mercer smiled at the same horizon, because sometimes the road doesn't just lead you somewhere. It brings you back to who you were always meant to be. The next few days passed in a blur of soft light and quiet gratitude. For once, the hospital didn't feel like a place of endings. It felt like a place of beginnings. The nurse returned to work, her limp still faint but fading, her spirit steadier. Word of what had happened spread faster than she expected. People started leaving small notes at the nurse's station. Thank you for what you did. God bless the road angels. And one that made her smile most. You didn't just save a life. You restored faith. She didn't respond to any of them. She didn't need to. Out on Highway 47, the road saints rode again. The storm had cleared. The asphalt steamed under the spring sun, and the world felt new. Jax led the pack. His ribs still taped, but his posture strong, like a man who'd been rebuilt piece by piece and come out better for it. Behind him, Rico joked over the radio about how he'd nearly drowned pushing that car, and Leon kept insisting that Jax owed him breakfast for medical stress. Their laughter rolled like thunder, this time, the good kind. When they reached the ridge overlooking the city, Jax slowed his bike and stopped. The others followed. Below them, the skyline gleamed in the distance, a sharp line of silver and glass. Hard to believe it's the same place, Leon murmured. Storm changes everything, Jax said. Washes the lies away, leaves what matters, Rico smirked. You get poetic when you almost die, boss, Jax chuckled. Maybe, or maybe I just got reminded that some people are still worth the fight. He looked down at the hospital's rooftop, where a small red flag fluttered, the emergency signal light still flashing faintly. For a long moment, he just watched it. Then, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a white envelope, the kind used for discharge papers. Inside was a photo someone from the hospital had sent him. It showed a boy in a hospital bed, smiling weakly, holding a small plush hawk in his hands. At the bottom, someone had written in marker, "He's flying again." Back at the hospital, the nurse ended her shift at sunset. She walked out into the golden light, her hair catching the warm wind, her scrubs rumpled but her smile unshakable. There, parked by the curb, were 3 familiar motorcycles. She froze for a heartbeat, not from fear this time, but from something close to joy. Jax leaned against his bike, helmet tucked under his arm. "You're off the clock, right?" She laughed. "Barely. You here to check my vitals again?" Rico grinned. Nah, we just wanted to make sure you didn't forget how to breathe after all that drama. She rolled her eyes, then turned to Jax. How's the shoulder? He flexed it slightly. Hurts when I lie down. So I just don't. They stood there, the moment warm and wordless. Then Jax held something out to her, a folded piece of paper. What's this? She asked. He shrugged. The official report. Thought you'd want to see how it ends. She unfolded it carefully. Inside was a note in his handwriting, short and simple. You didn't freeze. You didn't break. You just rode through the storm, same as us. If you ever need the road again, you know where to find us. Her throat tightened. She folded the note back up, tucking it into her pocket like a promise. The rumble of engines grew as the rest of the road saints lined up behind Jax. The sun hit their chrome, turning it to gold. The nurse stepped back, watching them like someone watching a legend ride out of her life. Jax glanced at her one last time. You take care of that heart of yours, the one that saves people. And you take care of yours, the one that still believes in them. He smiled faintly. Deal. He kicked the ignition. The others followed. The roar of 12 bikes filled the parking lot, a sound that somehow felt like a hymn. The nurse raised her hand in a small wave as they rolled away. Leather, steel and loyalty fading into the orange horizon. For a moment, she thought it was over. Then her phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number, check your trunk. Her eyebrows furrowed. She turned, unlocked her car, and lifted the trunk. Inside was a single object, a small silver keychain shaped like a feather. She laughed through the tears that came anyway. Same feather, same message. Ride free. The world was quiet again, but she no longer felt alone, and that was how it always went with the road saints. They didn't stick around for applause. They didn't wait for news crews or medals. They just rode toward the next storm, knowing someone else would need them when the sky darkened again. Because sometimes the heroes aren't the ones who stand in the spotlight. They're the ones who disappear down a long open road, leaving hope in their wake. The next morning, the sky over Highway 19 was the color of ash and gold, the kind of sky that makes you pause, even if you've got somewhere to be. At the hospital parking lot, a nurse stood watching the road. Her shift was over, but her thoughts weren't. The past few days had rewritten everything she thought she knew about courage. For years, she'd told herself that people didn't care anymore, that kindness had limits, that the world moved too fast for compassion to catch up. But those men, those bikers, they'd proven her wrong. They hadn't asked for her name. They hadn't needed her story. They'd just seen fear and replaced it with safety. And that was something she'd never forget. Inside the hospital, the little boy was awake now. His mother, the woman they'd found in the trunk, was recovering too. Doctors said it was a miracle she survived the night, but the nurse knew better. It wasn't luck. It was timing, and 12 engines that refused to drive past a cry for help. When she visited them later, the boy smiled up from his bed. My mom says angels don't always have wings, he whispered. Sometimes they ride motorcycles. She laughed softly, brushing his hair back. She's right about that. Then, before she left, she slipped something from her pocket onto the table beside his bed. A silver feather keychain. Keep this, she said. It's from the people who found you. That night, hundreds of miles away, Jack sat alone outside the Iron Hawk's garage. The air was cool, the sky heavy with stars, and the road stretched endlessly ahead, dark, quiet, waiting. Rico was inside, working on a busted carburetor. Leon was asleep on the couch. The others were scattered across the shop like ghosts that hadn't yet decided to rest. Jax took a deep breath, pulled out his phone, and scrolled to the last message he'd received from the nurse. She's going to make it. Thank you, he didn't reply. Didn't need to. He pocketed the phone, looked up at the night sky, and smiled. A small, tired, satisfied smile, because for men like him, there was no finish line. Just the next road, the next cry, the next person who thought no one would stop for them, and as long as there were roads, there would be riders. Across town, the nurse sat on her porch steps with a mug of coffee cooling in her hands. The sound of engines came faintly from the distance, not close, but enough to make her heart lift. She didn't know where they were going, but she knew why. And somehow, knowing that was enough. She looked down at the faint scar on her arm, the reminder of fear, then at the feather keychain hanging from her keys. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of the road anymore. If this story reminded you that courage doesn't need armor, it just needs heart, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Have you ever witnessed kindness from a stranger that changed how you see the world? Tell us your story in the comments, because your experience might inspire our next tale of compassion and justice. And here's a little challenge for the sharp-eyed viewers. There's a quiet moment around minute 6:28 when the nurse touches the silver feather that reveals something important long before anyone explains it. Watch it again and tell us what you noticed. Only the most observant will catch it, because in this world, the smallest acts often carry the loudest echoes. Sometimes the road to healing doesn't start with a siren. It starts with the sound of a motorcycle pulling over.